What if the woman who always stood by Meghan Markle just found out the one secret she could never forgive? The buzz around Meghan Markle has never been quiet. From the moment she stepped into the spotlight as Prince Harry's girlfriend, her name has echoed through every major tabloid, every royal podcast, every op-ed column in the world. Yet, in recent weeks, the noise took on a new tone. A different energy pulsed through the headlines. It wasn't just about another fashion choice or PR appearance. It wasn't about archetypes or Netflix. This time, it was personal. This time, it wasn't just the British public or the royal institution raising questions. It was her own mother. Before we continue, please like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Doria Ragland, the ever-discreet figure standing behind Meghan through thick and thin, had been her anchor. In a sea of scrutiny, Doria was always the calm in the storm. She was present during Meghan's wedding, walked into Windsor Castle with quiet dignity, and sat through that Oprah interview without saying a single controversial word. Her presence was not only symbolic but powerful. So when Doria abruptly vanished from public appearances and cut all ties with Meghan, without so much as a whisper, questions flooded the internet like a tidal wave. What could drive a mother, who had been nothing but supportive, to turn her back on her daughter? What could cause a split so silent, yet so violent in emotional resonance? Enter Tom Bower. The renowned investigative biographer is no stranger to controversy. Known for his sharp pen and refusal to sugarcoat truths, Bower has long been considered a scalpel to the polished surface of public figures. But this time, his blade went deeper than ever before. In his latest exposé, he alleges that during her early Hollywood days, Meghan Markle wasn't just auditioning for roles or blogging about avocado toast. According to Bower, she was allegedly linked to a luxury escort network that catered to the world's elite, billionaires, oligarchs, foreign dignitaries, and tech tycoons. Not as a celebrity guest or plus one, but as a participant, and not just loosely associated. Bower claims to have evidence, bank transfers, travel logs, coded invoices, even testimony from insiders who once walked in the same circles. The explosive nature of the allegations shook not just royal watchers, but even those who had once supported Meghan's rise. For her critics, it was confirmation of long-whispered suspicions. For her fans, it was unthinkable. But for Doria Ragland, it was a moment of reckoning. According to multiple insider sources, Doria confronted Meghan after reading early drafts of the exposé that had circulated among media outlets. What she allegedly learned horrified her. Sources claim that within days of their private confrontation, Doria ceased all contact with Meghan. No calls, no texts, no birthday posts, no denials on her daughter's behalf. She went completely silent, and in the world of celebrity, silence from a family member often speaks louder than 100 interviews. So what exactly did Bower reveal? Is there any truth behind the claims, or is this just another character assassination by the British press? Did Doria leave to protect her own peace, or was she genuinely betrayed by her daughter's hidden past? And how does this revelation, if proven true, reframe everything we thought we knew about Meghan's journey from Hollywood B-lister to royal renegade? These are the questions we're unpacking today. But be warned, this isn't your usual royal drama recap. This story digs deep into the underbelly of early Hollywood, a world of secret deals and shadowy power brokers, where success is often paid for in ways the public never sees. It's a story of ambition, deception, and most painfully, a story of a mother who may have discovered too much. And for those thinking this is just tabloid gossip with a new twist, remember, Tom Bower doesn't write fiction. His past books have brought down CEOs, exposed political corruption, and forced public reckonings from the powerful. If what he says is even partly true, Meghan Markle could be facing a backlash more intense and more personal than anything she's endured before. As the video unfolds, we'll guide you through all the essential pieces of this unfolding drama. We'll revisit Meghan's earliest days in Hollywood, tracing a path that until now has been carefully polished and controlled. We'll introduce you to the key players named in Bower's report, some who've chosen to stay anonymous, others whose reputations are now on the line. We'll show you the circumstantial evidence that's hard to ignore, odd travel patterns, mismatched timelines, and money trails that suggest something deeper. More than that, we'll bring Doria's heartbreak into focus. Because this isn't just a story about Meghan. It's a story about a mother's love, a mother's hope, and possibly a mother's devastation. The human drama here is unavoidable. Imagine raising a child you believe in completely, watching her fight tooth and nail to build a life of independence and prestige, only to be confronted with documents and testimonies that paint a far different picture. Imagine realizing that the daughter you defended with your silence may have kept from you the darkest chapters of her life. That's not a betrayal easily healed. That's the kind of wound that echoes through every room, every family gathering, every sleepless night. And Doria Ragland, once the unwavering presence by Meghan's side, now walks alone. But before we jump to conclusions, let's ask the uncomfortable questions. What does the evidence actually say? Are these accusations credible, or are they being sensationalized by a media machine hungry for a new takedown? What does Meghan's silence or her strategic counter-messaging tell us? And why has no legal action been taken against Bauer if these allegations are, as Meghan's camp suggests, completely false? Over the next several chapters, we're going to peel back every layer of this story. No fluff, no filler, just deep investigative storytelling. Because this isn't just another Meghan Markle scandal. This might be the one that finally changes everything. Stay with us. If you thought you knew who Meghan Markle was, think again. This is the story Doria Ragland never wanted the world to know. But now that it's out, the question isn't whether it will change public opinion. The question is whether it's already destroyed a mother's love. The glitter of Hollywood blinds most who stare too long. Behind the lens, the gowns, and the headlines is a far less romanticized reality, especially for aspiring actresses without powerful last names or connections. Meghan Markle, long before she became a duchess or a Netflix producer, was just another young woman hustling through that system. A face in a crowd, one of thousands, all hoping to land that one role that could launch everything. When Meghan first moved to Los Angeles in pursuit of fame, her circumstances were not unique. She had studied theater at Northwestern University and had done an internship at the U.S. Embassy in Buenos Aires. She was educated, articulate, and driven. But Hollywood is an industry that thrives on two things: luck and leverage. And for a young biracial woman without an agent from a top 5 talent firm, luck alone was rarely enough. Her earliest gigs were barely memorable. A background role here, a walk-on line there. She appeared in brief scenes in shows like General Hospital and Fringe, and she became known not by her characters, but by what she wore or how she looked. She once joked about being known as Hot Girl Number 2 or Briefcase Girl Number 24 on Deal or No Deal. At first, it was something she could laugh off, until years passed and the substantial roles didn't come. The struggle to break into Hollywood isn't just about competing talent. It's about surviving the cost of living in Los Angeles, a city where rent alone can devour every dollar from a day job. Meghan reportedly took on side gigs to make ends meet. She taught calligraphy and gave private tutoring lessons. Her blog, The Tig, began as an outlet for her voice but also functioned as a personal brand builder, aimed at elevating her profile beyond the roles she couldn't yet land. But even with all this hustle, the acting doors didn't swing open easily. Meghan didn't have the kind of management team that could get her in the room with producers of prestige films. What she had instead were what many in the industry call modeling opportunities. A gray zone network of fashion events, promotional gigs, and high-end social parties where struggling actresses, influencers, and hopefuls often mingled with wealthy men. These scenes have always existed just beneath the surface of Hollywood. A whisper here, a knowing look there. Beautiful women were often invited to luxury penthouses or exclusive after-parties under the pretense of networking or brand work. But in reality, many were being auditioned for something far less glamorous. At some of these events, according to several unnamed sources cited by investigative writers, actresses were essentially being shopped around. Meghan's path intersected with this world, according to Tom Bauer's book, during a period when she was living paycheck to paycheck. Though she had a SAG card and some minor credits, she hadn't yet secured a consistent role. According to Bauer, she was approached by individuals associated with elite modeling and social agencies. Agencies that on paper connected models with luxury brands, but in practice arranged exclusive companionship for powerful clients. At the time, these arrangements were cloaked in euphemisms. They were called lifestyle consultancies or VIP introductions. The meetings were labeled as dinners or product launches, but the expectations were often unspoken and understood. The industry tolerated it. In some cases, it even encouraged it. For many women, these introductions came with promises. A producer might offer a walk-on role. A director might suggest a future audition, a financier might invest in their project. It was in this blurred and morally questionable world that Bauer alleges Meghan became involved, not as a mere guest, but as someone who participated under contract. The book claims that she was featured in blacklist catalogs circulated among Middle Eastern elites and ultra-wealthy clients who were seeking discretion, beauty, and companionship in exchange for gifts, travel, and cash. To understand why someone might consider stepping into such an environment, one must understand the desperation that can set in after years of being ignored in a brutal industry. For many actresses, the pressure to stay visible is intense. Every month without work is another slip down the ladder, and every photo opportunity at a party or charity gala is another chance to be noticed. One must also consider the culture of enabling that surrounded young actresses during the early 2000s. It was a time when Harvey Weinstein was still in power, a time when actresses were told to smile, flirt, and play the game. It was before #MeToo, before the industry-wide reckoning. Women who spoke out were silenced. Those who cooperated, willingly or not, were rewarded, if only briefly. Meghan's rise during this time is viewed by some critics as suspiciously fast. Though she languished for years in obscurity, she suddenly landed a regular role on Suits, a well-paying gig with international exposure. Was it purely talent and timing? Or were connections built in those exclusive circles finally paying off? Bauer doesn't state this as fact, but he paints a web of implications. He connects dates, payments, and events with uncanny precision. According to his research, there were bank deposits into offshore accounts that didn't match Meghan's reported earnings during that period. He cites testimonies from former assistants who recall being asked to organize travel plans under aliases. One assistant, who remains anonymous, reportedly told Bauer, "She was smart. She didn't just take the money and run. She built relationships. She studied these men, charmed them. She was calculating, but always graceful." To the casual observer, this paints a double life. On the one hand, Meghan was the struggling artist with a food budget and roommates. On the other, she was being flown to Dubai for undisclosed brand events or appearing in European cities for photo ops with mysterious benefactors. Still, none of this was ever proven in court. No documents have been authenticated for public review. Meghan herself has never addressed these rumors directly, perhaps out of legal caution, or perhaps to avoid legitimizing them. What we do know is that during this time, Meghan seemed to become more strategic. She stopped talking about certain gigs and interviews. She began crafting a brand rooted in empowerment, minimalism, and social justice. When the TIG launched, it was filled with travel photos, inspirational quotes, and a carefully curated voice of aspiration. It's as if she was writing a new version of herself while quietly burying the old one. And this raises a question that isn't just about Meghan. It's about survival. In an industry that demands beauty but offers few guarantees, what lengths are acceptable in the pursuit of success? How many actors and actresses have played similar games but never been exposed? Even more haunting is the question, who protects these women when the truth, or even the accusation, finally surfaces? If Meghan did walk this path, was she a victim of circumstance? Or a willing participant who later reinvented herself as a duchess? Doria Ragland, by all accounts, never knew this version of her daughter. She believed in Meghan's strength, her intelligence, her resilience. She believed her daughter had broken into Hollywood on merit and ambition. If Bauer's book forced her to confront a different narrative, the heartbreak would be profound. Because for a mother like Doria, the question wouldn't be whether Meghan did what was necessary to survive. It would be why her daughter never told her the truth. As we continue to unpack the rest of this story, we will explore the darker details of the allegations in Bauer's exposé. But for now, this chapter serves as the emotional and psychological groundwork for what's to come. Meghan's early struggles weren't just a series of auditions. They were a battle for relevance in an unforgiving world. And that battle may have come with costs no one, especially not her mother, was ready to accept. When Tom Bauer enters a story, it is rarely with a whisper. His arrival is a full-throttle disruption. In the world of investigative biographies, Bauer is not a gentle chronicler or an apologist for celebrity missteps. He's a disruptor with a scalpel, and when he chooses a subject, that person's carefully constructed image often doesn't survive the first chapter. So when Tom Bauer turned his focus toward Meghan Markle, many in the media held their breath. This was not a blogger chasing clicks. This was not a gossip columnist rehashing tabloid fluff. This was a man known for peeling back the layers of Britain's most powerful figures, regardless of the cost or fallout. Born in 1946, Tom Bower built his reputation through a lifetime of confronting giants. He began his career in the legal field before moving into journalism, where he quickly gained a reputation for exposing corruption, lies, and double lives. His style is direct, often controversial, and deeply rooted in documented research, whistleblower accounts, and financial forensics. He's taken on business tycoons like Richard Branson and Mohammed Al-Fayed, politicians like Tony Blair and Boris Johnson, and members of the royal family themselves, including Prince Charles. He's not known for publishing puff pieces. When Bower writes a biography, it tends to make headlines and lawsuits. Bower's writing is precise. He builds narratives on the backs of confidential documents, off-the-record interviews, and patterns often missed by casual observers. His critics call him ruthless. His supporters call him fearless. But either way, his track record demands attention. So why Meghan Markle? For Bower, she represents a convergence of royalty, media manipulation, and celebrity power, all things he has spent his life dissecting. He saw in Meghan a subject not just interesting, but vital to understanding how modern fame works in an age where perception can be purchased and truth repackaged. From the moment Meghan married Prince Harry, Bower reportedly began collecting data, quietly at first, studying media inconsistencies, examining public records, and requesting interviews with people from Meghan's past. His team contacted former friends, colleagues, PR reps, even ex-roommates. He didn't move fast. He moved deliberately. And according to those familiar with his methods, his research lasted more than 2 years before he ever started drafting a manuscript. This wasn't just about curiosity. This was about a pattern he claimed to see emerging, a public figure who had carefully constructed her narrative, silencing dissent and controlling press access. But Bower believed that the truth, or at least a fuller version of it, still existed, and he intended to find it. What made Bower's pursuit unique was not just his willingness to follow leads that other journalists feared to touch. It was his ability to uncover paper trails, financial statements, offshore account activity, flight logs, NDA-enforced testimonies from those who once worked in exclusive VIP circles. According to insiders familiar with the development of his book, Bower went far beyond the standard practice of quoting anonymous sources. He followed money. He scrutinized emails. He traced real-world events to seemingly unrelated social connections. One of the central threads of his report, which would become the most explosive portion of the manuscript, was a series of interviews he conducted with individuals linked to a now-defunct modeling agency operating out of Los Angeles. The agency, which was known publicly for providing upscale promotional models for fashion campaigns and gala events, allegedly had a secret list, one that categorized certain women as private companions for international clients. The moment Bower got his hands on those names, along with banking patterns that raised questions, he shifted his focus entirely to the years before Meghan became a household name. It was there, he believed, that the Real story lived, not in the royal palace, not in Canada or Montecito, but in the years that Meghan's publicists described as the struggle. Bower cross-referenced travel schedules, social media posts, and hotel check-ins. He discovered frequent trips to Dubai, Qatar, and private islands that did not align with Meghan's reported income at the time. He located invoices from agencies marked with cryptic descriptions like luxury branding session and client discretion management. In isolation, these could be innocent. Together, they raised a pattern that suggested a far more sophisticated operation than modeling alone. In Bower's view, the evidence painted a picture of someone who had learned early on how to navigate the corridors of power, not just in Hollywood, but among global elites who sought charm, beauty, and silence. He does not state outright that Meghan engaged in unlawful activity. Instead, he raises questions, many of them uncomfortable, all of them difficult to ignore. One of the major revelations, according to Bower's manuscript, involves payments made through an offshore trust linked to a now-deceased Saudi businessman. The trust allegedly made monthly disbursements labeled under the pretense of consultation services. Bower tracked these deposits and cross-checked them with Meghan's documented travel and accommodation expenses at five-star resorts during a time when she publicly claimed to be struggling to afford rent. This was where the story began to shift from speculation to concern. Bauer then conducted interviews with individuals he refers to in the manuscript using initials, protecting their identities, but detailing their roles. One former event coordinator described Meghan as professional and always respectful, but added she knew exactly what was expected at those events. It wasn't just about smiling for the camera. Another, a driver who worked for a high-profile Beverly Hills security agency, recalled picking her up in the middle of the night from places where actresses usually didn't go unless there was a private arrangement involved. It was after these testimonies began stacking up that Bauer reportedly reached out to Doria Ragland for comment. Sources claim she never responded. But it wasn't long after that request, they say, that Doria began distancing herself, not only from Meghan's business ventures but from Meghan personally. And that raises the bigger question, why now? Why did Bauer wait until now to publish? Some speculate it was strategic. He wanted the royal press cycle to cool. He wanted the public to feel distance from the Oprah interview, from Harry's memoir, from the Netflix documentary. That distance would allow readers to engage with the new revelations not as royal drama, but as investigative journalism. Others believe Bauer released his work now because he felt urgency. He allegedly worried that many of the people he interviewed were backing out, facing pressure from Meghan's legal team or media consultants. The window to expose the truth, in his view, was closing. Regardless of his motive, the impact of the book has been undeniable. Within hours of excerpts leaking online, Meghan's team issued a general denial, dismissing the claims as baseless character defamation. Yet, no lawsuit was filed. No cease and desist letters followed. Some interpreted this silence as strategy, why draw more attention? But others saw it as caution. Perhaps Bauer had more than he published. Critics of Bauer have accused him of building a narrative on whispers and innuendo. But his defenders argue that his allegations are rooted in investigative standards that most journalists are too afraid to apply to celebrity royalty. His past works have withstood legal scrutiny, and he is not known for backing down. For Meghan, Bauer's entrance into the arena represents a deeper challenge than anything she's previously faced. Tabloid rumors are one thing. A journalist with access to financial documents and confidential testimonies is another. And for Doria Ragland, who had stood silently by her daughter through marriages, interviews, miscarriages, births, and betrayals, this was a turning point she could not ignore. Her absence from Meghan's life following Bauer's revelations was not a coincidence. According to sources close to the situation, it was the result of a private conversation that shattered her trust. As this saga unfolds, Tom Bauer's role will continue to be central, not as a provocateur, but as a journalist who took a risk others wouldn't. He asked questions no one dared. And now the world is asking too. When Tom Bauer began laying out the specifics of the alleged escort network Meghan Markle was linked to during her early Hollywood years, the reaction across media circles was instant, part disbelief, part intrigue, and overwhelmingly a sense of unease. Not because the allegations lacked detail. Quite the opposite. What Bauer revealed wasn't a mere gossip-fueled accusation. It was a carefully pieced-together framework of events, people, payments, and implications that suggested something far more calculated than random rumor. According to Bauer's findings, the world Meghan navigated while trying to break into mainstream acting was not just shaped by red carpet events and casting calls. It was a subterranean Hollywood, one many insiders acknowledged but never spoke of on record, a world filled with elite introductions, exclusive invitations, and the quiet promise of financial stability in exchange for time, discretion, and presence. Bauer's exposé pointed to a now-defunct modeling agency that operated out of West Hollywood. Publicly, it was branded as a high-end boutique consultancy offering promotional models and image consultants for corporate events, film festivals, and VIP gatherings. But beneath the surface, this agency, according to former employees and clients Bauer interviewed, had a private catalog of women labeled as Tier 1 companions. These weren't escorts in the traditional sense, at least not openly. They were high-status companions available to powerful men who didn't want transactional relationships but did expect silence and availability. The individuals who organized this network operated in a very specific way. Their first step was always to find women who were aspiring, actresses, models, dancers, even some from the fashion and tech influencer space. The ideal candidate was someone photogenic, socially graceful, ambitious, and financially vulnerable. According to Bauer's sources, women like Meghan fit the mold perfectly. They weren't necessarily being coerced. The offers were always framed as opportunities, a dinner with a benefactor, a modeling gig overseas, a luxury weekend in Monaco for a charity gala. But these arrangements almost always came with unwritten expectations. Meghan, Bauer alleges, was recruited into this circle not through random chance but via introduction. He cites a now anonymous woman, once a booking agent for the agency, who claims she personally met Meghan at a private rooftop event in Los Angeles. The woman told Bauer that Meghan stood out, not just because she was beautiful, but because she knew how to talk to powerful men. She was assertive without being aggressive. She listened more than she spoke. That's rare in this line of work. It was after that meeting, she claims, that Meghan was quietly added to the internal roster. Clients could browse through a coded database that included photos, fake bios, and a rating system that hinted at availability and cost. These clients were not everyday businessmen. According to Bauer's findings, they included foreign royalty from the Gulf states, European billionaires, Russian industrialists, and certain well-known entertainment moguls in Los Angeles. All of them wanted discretion, and most paid through offshore accounts. Bauer outlines 3 specific trips Meghan allegedly took during this period that raised suspicions. The first was to Dubai, under the guise of attending a fashion event as a guest of honor. Flight records and hotel stays were cross-checked against her publicly available schedule, and Bauer notes that no official brand or sponsor ever acknowledged her appearance. The second was to Istanbul, where she reportedly stayed for 3 days at a luxury resort used often by political and tech elites. Again, there was no known brand affiliation, no social media posts, and no explanation from her camp. The third was a 2-day stop in Mykonos, Greece, which Bauer ties to a billionaire's birthday celebration attended only by women from certain modeling rosters. To be clear, Bauer does not accuse Meghan of criminal behavior. He never uses the term prostitution outright. Instead, he paints a picture of blurred morality in a system that enabled, and in many cases encouraged, young women to engage in companionship arrangements that danced along legal gray zones. These arrangements were made to seem mutually beneficial, but often left the women without protection if things went wrong. What gives Bauer's story weight is not just the travel logs or financial anomalies, it's the corroborating testimonies. He speaks of private text messages, booking records, and a digital archive retrieved from a cloud account tied to the defunct agency. In one message thread allegedly involving a coordinator and an anonymous Gulf client, Meghan's codename appears next to a scheduled dinner. The message reads, she confirmed, "Keep car on standby after drinks. No overnight. She flies back AM." Perhaps the most chilling detail in Bauer's exposé is the mention of an encrypted payment ledger obtained via a leak from someone who once processed wire transfers for a high-profile concierge firm. In this document, coded entries include various initials and service terms that link directly with Meghan's travel dates. The entries list deposits into a trust account in the Cayman Islands, with labels such as DUB/May and IST/August special. The amounts range between $12,000 to $25,000 per entry. Critics argue these entries are circumstantial at best. They claim Bauer never shows direct, legal evidence that links Meghan by name or social security number to the transactions. However, others point out that in the world of elite secrecy, coded ledgers and untraceable aliases are exactly how operations stay alive. The fact that these records exist at all, and that they align with Meghan's movements, has led many to believe that at the very least, something was happening off the books. More controversial still is the alleged role of an intermediary named only as R. This person, described by multiple sources as a retired Hollywood producer turned social facilitator, is said to have introduced Meghan to some of her more influential patrons during this period. According to Bauer's reporting, R was known for managing exclusive client introduction portfolios and maintaining relationships with both agents and clients. He never appeared in public with his clients, never took photos, and conducted all communications through encrypted messaging apps. Bauer claims to have seen correspondence from R that includes photos of Meghan, booking rates, and detailed service preferences of clients. One of the more explosive details involves a private villa in the Maldives. Meghan allegedly spent 3 days there in late 2011, shortly before her breakout on Suits. The booking, made under an alias, was handled by an agency Bauer claims is linked to at least 3 other high-profile escort scandals in Europe. What makes this stay noteworthy is that during those exact dates, Meghan told an interviewer she was prepping for an important audition and keeping things low-key. No further detail was ever given. Bauer questions whether this prep period was actually part of her time working for a client under the guise of a tropical retreat. The response to these claims has been sharply divided. Meghan's defenders argue this is character assassination, an attempt to reduce a successful, self-made woman to a stereotype of ambitious women who sleep their way to the top. They point out that no verified bank account, contract, or legal document conclusively proves her involvement. Her team issued a vague public statement labeling the allegations as dangerous, defamatory, and clearly timed to provoke harm. But those defending Bauer say his evidence may not be legally actionable, but it is journalistically valid. They argue that the patterns, documents, and testimonies are too aligned to dismiss outright. And perhaps most telling of all, no lawsuits have been filed against Bauer personally. That silence, they argue, speaks volumes. What emerges from this section of the story is not a smoking gun, but a fog of clues, leading down shadowy corridors where the truth often wears many faces. Whether Meghan was an active participant, an unwilling pawn, or simply adjacent to something nefarious remains open to interpretation. But for Doria Ragland, none of that mattered. The emotional fallout from reading these chapters was reportedly devastating. Friends close to Doria claim she was not only shocked but blindsided. She had always believed Meghan was transparent about her struggles, that she had taken the hard path with dignity. To read that her daughter may have been quietly profiting from elite companionship circles while keeping up appearances of financial hardship shook the foundation of their relationship. As Bauer's revelations made their way across media platforms and into private circles, Doria's silence deepened. No rebuttal. No clarification. She did not appear beside Meghan at any event that followed. Sources allege that she stopped taking Meghan's calls shortly after excerpts from Bauer's book were privately circulated among Hollywood insiders ahead of its official release. In the public eye, Meghan kept smiling. Her social media presence stayed curated. Her official brand statements emphasized empowerment, charity, and growth. But behind closed doors, the questions raised by Bauer were spreading like wildfire, not just among fans, but among family. And while the world debated whether Meghan was the victim of tabloid destruction or the architect of her own secrecy, the one voice that remained heartbreakingly absent was her mother's. As the revelations in Tom Bauer's exposé began to ripple across media outlets and private circles, a new wave of interest surged around the individuals allegedly connected to Meghan Markle during her early days in Hollywood. While some observers focused solely on the claims surrounding an elite escort network, others began combing through her past associations, travel records, and social patterns to trace a more focused line of inquiry. Who were the clients? This question, delicate and incendiary, goes to the heart of the controversy surrounding Meghan's past. In Hollywood, where whispers and rumors swirl like cigarette smoke in a dark lounge, the identities of those linked to high-end companion arrangements are rarely written down. They exist in back channels, in encrypted conversations, and behind the velvet rope. But Tom Bauer, through his meticulous pattern recognition and investigative instinct, began to outline a list of individuals who, while never directly accused, appeared frequently and suspiciously in proximity to Meghan's movements. At the top of this web are three names Bauer references with consistent detail: a Middle Eastern billionaire, a Russian tech magnate, and a British-American film producer with deep ties to both the fashion industry and political lobbying. Though none of these men are named explicitly in the public version of the manuscript, insiders who've reviewed the full text claim that the descriptions, timing, and circumstances offer little doubt as to their real-world identities. The first, known only as Mr. In the book, is described as a powerful investor based in Abu Dhabi, known for sponsoring international film festivals and financing independent cinema through offshore companies. According to Bauer, this man had a reputation for surrounding himself with rising stars, especially those struggling to break into the mainstream. Meghan, he claims, attended at least 2 private functions hosted by Mr. A, one in Cannes and one in Marrakesh. Bauer places her at these events using photo metadata, guest list leaks, and a series of overlapping digital check-ins on social media from mutual acquaintances. At the Marrakesh event, the guest list was tightly controlled. It was not a public gala, but an exclusive wellness retreat held in a private estate outside the city. Bauer cross-referenced hotel invoices and airport flight logs and found that Meghan's name, under a known alias, appeared in a room booking managed by a luxury concierge firm known for handling VIP clientele. While such a trip could plausibly be explained as a brand-sponsored getaway or wellness invitation, the payment structure raised red flags. The trip was not charged to Meghan's account or any associated brand, but instead to an unnamed holding company registered in the British Virgin Islands. The second figure, referred to as S, is a Russian-born billionaire who built his empire in the cybersecurity space. Known for funding avant-garde art projects and dating a string of European socialites, S was seen at several events where Meghan also appeared during the years 2010 to 2012. While there is no public photo of the two together, Bauer claims to have obtained private images from a former bodyguard who worked one of these events in St. Bart's. In the images, Meghan is seen standing near S at a long dinner table on a private yacht, with roughly a dozen guests in attendance. More concerning, according to Bauer, were the bank records he accessed showing wire transfers from a private banking institution in Zurich to an account linked to one of Meghan's past business entities, one that had gone dormant after she joined Suits. The amounts weren't enormous, but they were unusual. The transfers, 3 in total, each under $10,000, were labeled simply consulting. Meghan never listed any consulting income on her tax records from that period, nor did she publicly acknowledge any freelance business services. The third alleged client connection comes with even more complexity. Identified only as the producer, this man is a dual citizen of the UK and the US, with a track record of producing both blockbuster films and fashion campaigns. According to Bauer's sources, this man played a central role in shaping Meghan's public image during a transitional period in her career, when she moved from small television appearances to becoming a staple on red carpets and in fashion circles. The producer is described as a kingmaker of sorts, someone who uses his connections to elevate the right person at the right time, often for a price. Emails obtained by Bauer, supposedly leaked by a former personal assistant to the producer, show a recurring correspondence in which Meghan's name appears in context of placement strategy and visibility schedule. These emails, dated several months before her role on Suits was confirmed, reference meetings with brands, travel to Toronto, and a possible feature arrangement with a fashion magazine that ultimately never materialized. One email reads, "She's playing ball, let's push her ahead." NDA was finalized. Weekend trip still on. These suggestions of strategic support from powerful men raise questions about whether Meghan's rise was purely meritocratic. Did she receive help? Was it a mutually beneficial arrangement, one where influence and visibility were exchanged for companionship or discretion? Or was it, as some of her supporters argue, simply the result of networking, talent, and timing? The truth likely lives somewhere in the gray. Bauer also points to patterns in Meghan's professional timeline that coincide with her appearances at private functions. He notes, for instance, that her TIG blog launched shortly after several trips abroad that were not documented in the entertainment press but can be traced through tagged friends and geodata. The implication is that her brand was being curated, not grown organically. Someone, somewhere, was investing in her development, not in a public, mentor-driven way, but from behind the curtain. Another intriguing link Bauer makes is to a now-closed philanthropic initiative that Meghan once promoted on social media, a vague empowerment foundation with connections to high-net-worth donors. The foundation, Bauer claims, was bankrolled by an individual later named in the Panama Papers leak, and its tax records indicate heavy upfront funding with no clear donor trail. Meghan's involvement was limited to one event and a handful of promotional posts, but the tie raised concerns about her vetting process and connections. To fully understand the implications of these links, one must examine the culture of secrecy that exists at the top of entertainment and global society. Companion arrangements, patronage networks, and whispered benefactors are not uncommon. What's rare is the surfacing of names, transactions, and receipts. In this case, Bauer presents a collage of evidence, none conclusive on its own, but collectively suggestive of a relationship between Meghan and several individuals who, for reasons unexplained, supported her rise financially or socially. Those who defend Meghan argue that women in Hollywood are often photographed at events with powerful men, and that such appearances mean nothing. They assert that any payments or communications likely had innocent explanations, perhaps sponsorships, appearance fees, or paid partnerships under early influencer-style arrangements. They ask, why assume the worst when no formal crime has been proven? On the other hand, skeptics say that the consistency of Meghan's presence among certain powerful circles, without public acknowledgement or financial transparency, indicates something more strategic. They question why so many details of her early life are vague, and why she avoids speaking about those formative years with any depth. They ask, if she was proud of the hustle, why hide the names of those who helped? As the fallout from these alleged client links continues to swirl, one thing becomes clear: the damage may already be done. Whether or not the Min Bauer references ever confirm their roles, the public now sees a cloud of unanswered questions around Meghan's narrative of self-made success. For her brand, built on empowerment and transparency, this cloud is not just inconvenient, it's corrosive. And for Doria Ragland, who had believed in her daughter's journey from struggling actress to duchess, the alleged presence of secret clients shattered the narrative entirely. If Meghan had entered into relationships for strategic gain, financial, professional, or both, and had hidden this from her own mother, it represented not just ambition but deception. Insiders say that after reading the full manuscript, Doria reportedly told a friend, "This isn't the girl I raised." While unconfirmed, the quote speaks to the emotional weight of betrayal, not in a legal sense, but in the context of personal truth. A mother may forgive mistakes, but it's much harder to forgive lies. Before the royal weddings, the lavish baby showers, the Netflix deals, and the Spotify controversies, there was a woman standing quietly behind it all: Doria Ragland. If Meghan Markle's rise to global fame has been loud, polarizing, and meticulously curated, her mother's role in that journey has been the polar opposite: quiet, steady, loyal. In many ways, Doria was the one figure in Meghan's life that remained untouched by scandal, unaffected by press manipulation, and seemingly immune to the chaos that surrounded her daughter's public transformation. Doria's image has always been one of integrity. A former makeup artist turned yoga instructor and social worker, she projected warmth without demanding attention. Unlike Meghan's father, Thomas Markle, who frequently turned to the media with grievances and demands, Doria avoided headlines, never sold stories, and never gave interviews. Her silence became her strength, and the public, even those skeptical of Meghan, respected Doria for it. When Meghan's engagement to Prince Harry was announced in late 2017, Doria immediately drew media attention simply because of how calm and collected she seemed. While other royal in-laws might have crumbled under the pressure of flashbulbs and royal etiquette, Doria held herself with a kind of dignity that transcended the glitter of Buckingham Palace. Her presence at the royal wedding, sitting alone in the chapel surrounded by British aristocracy, spoke volumes. She didn't need an entourage. She didn't need to make a statement. Her poise was the statement. Doria appeared to be the anchor in Meghan's storm. Throughout the media firestorms, Doria was there. During the Oprah Winfrey interview, when Meghan and Harry detailed their emotional struggles inside the royal family, Meghan referenced Doria as a rock. She contrasted her mother's quiet resilience with her father's public betrayal. "I just didn't want to be alive anymore," Meghan said, and in those words, she pointed to Doria as one of the few people she could trust completely. So when Doria suddenly vanished from Meghan's side, refusing public appearances, skipping events, and reportedly cutting off all contact, it was jarring. It didn't make sense. And that's precisely why it became news. For years, the media and the public saw Doria as Meghan's most trusted confidant. She attended Meghan's baby shower in New York, stood by her at Archie's birth, and even briefly moved into Frogmore Cottage to help Meghan navigate new motherhood. She was said to be a frequent guest in Montecito and was rumored to be deeply involved in helping raise Archie and Lillibut during the early pandemic lockdowns. For someone so essential to Meghan's emotional core, her absence wasn't just noticeable, it was seismic. The change came quietly, without explanation. Sources close to the Markle inner circle began whispering that Doria was no longer involved in Meghan's day-to-day life. She wasn't returning calls. She declined invitations to public events. And most notably, she refused to issue any kind of statement supporting Meghan in the wake of Tom Bauer's bombshell allegations. Why would a mother, so fiercely protective and loyal, distance herself in a moment of such intense media scrutiny? According to those who know Doria or claim to, something inside her changed after learning the contents of Bauer's manuscript. She had weathered storms before, but what Bauer revealed wasn't a tabloid headline or a smear campaign. It was a compiled report of alleged behavior, some of it from years ago, some more recent, but all of it pointing to a version of her daughter that Doria did not recognize. What stung the most, insiders suggest, wasn't the accusation itself, but the fact that Doria hadn't been told. If Meghan had admitted, even in private, to certain decisions she had made in her past, Doria may have found a way to process it. but learning about these alleged connections. Escort networks, offshore payments, coded ledgers, elite client dinners, from a journalist's expose rather than from her own daughter, reportedly shook Doria to the core. She felt blindsided, one source claimed. Not because Meghan had a past. Everyone has a past. But because Meghan made her believe there was nothing to hide. That emotional fracture is difficult to quantify. Doria wasn't just Meghan's mother. She was her moral center. Throughout Meghan's public journey, the media often painted Doria as the embodiment of authenticity, calm, and wisdom. She was the grounded counterweight to Meghan's glamorous reinvention. Her absence now creates a void that even Meghan's most loyal fans have struggled to ignore. In the months following the release of Bauer's book, observers noted a change in Meghan's public posture. Her confidence, though still intact, seemed more performative. Photos of Meghan on red carpets or at charity functions no longer carried the same warmth they once did. Critics described her expressions as forced. Her smiles didn't seem to reach her eyes. And though this could be attributed to media pressure or personal fatigue, some believed it was something deeper, the weight of Doria's absence. Friends of Doria, speaking off the record, described her as heartbroken but resolute. One reportedly said, "She's not angry. She's just sad. She feels like she never really knew the full story." Another said, "She's not going to embarrass Meghan publicly. That's not who she is. But she's not going to lie for her either. That distinction matters." Doria's decision to step back wasn't an act of vengeance. It was an act of self-preservation. For someone who had spent years standing quietly by Meghan's side, the thought of being complicit, knowingly or unknowingly, in presenting a false narrative became too heavy. And that raises an uncomfortable question. How well do we really know the people we love? Doria's choice not to issue a public statement, not to attend family gatherings, and not to sit beside Meghan at recent events speaks louder than any quote ever could. In the world of celebrity, silence is not apathy, it's protest. Especially when that silence comes from someone who previously never wavered in her support. What makes this even more tragic is the emotional isolation it brings. Meghan, who has long spoken about her sense of being an outsider, first as a biracial actress in Hollywood, then as a non-traditional royal, now finds herself alienated from the one person who always made her feel seen. There are those who hope this rift is temporary. That time, truth, and dialogue will heal what's been broken. That Doria will come to see the accusations as just that, accusations, and that she will return to her daughter's side. But even if reconciliation is possible, the damage has already been done. A mother's trust, once broken, is not easily repaired. Especially when the daughter in question built her public persona on authenticity, transparency, and empowerment, values that, if Bauer's claims are true, may have been selectively applied. Doria Ragland's story, though quieter than Meghan's, is arguably more human. It's a story of maternal pride, quiet sacrifice, and personal boundaries. It's a reminder that even the most supportive relationships can fracture under the weight of secrecy. And it forces the public to consider an unsettling reality. Sometimes, the people closest to us are the last to know who we really are. It didn't happen in front of a camera. There were no flashing lights, no dramatic gestures, no headlines at the precise moment it occurred. The fracture between Meghan Markle and her mother, Doria Ragland, began quietly. And like all deep emotional ruptures, it started with a realization, an abrupt shift in the ground beneath someone who believed they had been standing on solid truth. According to sources who were once close to Doria, the moment she discovered the contents of Tom Bauer's manuscript marked a turning point not just in her relationship with Meghan, but in her entire understanding of who her daughter had become. For years, Doria had trusted that Meghan, despite the chaos of fame and royalty, was grounded in authenticity and honesty. But the manuscript suggested otherwise. The actual moment Doria received the document, or parts of it, is still a matter of speculation. Some say it was sent to her by a concerned mutual acquaintance. Others claim a journalist reached out to her for comment and provided excerpts as a courtesy. But what is consistent across reports is that Doria didn't see the revelations coming. She had no forewarning from Meghan. No sit-down discussion. No phone call preparing her for the storm. What she reportedly read shook her. The narrative laid out by Bauer didn't just depict Meghan as an ambitious woman navigating Hollywood's murky waters. It alleged deliberate involvement in a shadowy world of exclusive companionship, offshore payments, and high-end networking that bordered on transactional intimacy. More painful than the accusations themselves was the implication that Meghan had kept all of it hidden from the very person who had sacrificed so much to support her rise. For Doria, a woman who had raised Meghan mostly on her own after separating from Thomas Markle, this wasn't just about embarrassment or media scandal. It was about betrayal. Doria had spent years defending Meghan, privately and publicly. She had been present at events not because she enjoyed the spotlight, but because she believed her daughter was doing meaningful work. She had embraced Meghan's marriage into the royal family with quiet grace, even when the weight of the crown would have intimidated most. She had believed, with every fiber of her being, in the narrative Meghan shared with the world, a tale of struggle, perseverance, and principled success. So to discover that this story may have omitted significant and morally complex chapters felt like a deep personal violation. Reports from those in Doria's close circle describe her reaction as layered. There was initial disbelief. Doria is said to have reread certain passages, cross-referenced dates, and even reached out to someone she trusted in the media to ask, "Is this real?" There was anger too, not the loud, explosive kind, but the kind that sits low and deep in the chest. A kind that simmers as a mother tries to reconcile the daughter she raised with the woman described in those pages. And finally, there was sadness. Crushing, silent sadness. According to one longtime friend of Doria's who spoke under the condition of anonymity, Doria made the decision to confront Meghan directly. She didn't want to go public. She didn't want a spectacle. She simply needed to hear the truth from her daughter's lips. That conversation, if it did occur, has never been publicly detailed. But its aftermath speaks volumes. One version of events suggests Doria flew to Montecito for a private visit. The meeting was reportedly tense, with Meghan defending herself by insisting that Bauer was twisting details and that his sources were compromised. She may have tried to minimize the claims, arguing that the elite circle she moved in during her early Hollywood years were part of the broader entertainment industry, and that any suggestion of impropriety was defamatory speculation. But Doria, according to sources, didn't find that explanation satisfying. She wasn't just looking for denial, she was looking for honesty. She wanted to know whether Meghan had, at any point, made choices that she had deliberately hidden from her mother, not because of shame, but because of strategic image management. What she found, reportedly, was avoidance. Not outright lies, but evasion. Reframing. A refusal to deal with the emotional truth beneath the public narrative. For Doria, that was worse than any one event or transaction. It wasn't the possibility that Meghan had entered an elite network or accepted luxury in exchange for companionship. It was the reality that her daughter had constructed an entire public identity while quietly editing out the parts that didn't align with her message of empowerment and authenticity, and had done so without trusting her own mother with the truth. After that confrontation, Doria returned home. She didn't return phone calls from Meghan's team. She didn't reply to follow-ups. She didn't appear in photos, attend events, or even issue the kind of bland statement that publicists usually draft in times of controversy. This silence was her answer. In the days and weeks that followed, Meghan reportedly attempted multiple times to reconnect. There were phone calls, messages, perhaps even intermediaries who urged Doria to let the matter go. But Doria stood firm. Not with anger, not with drama, just with distance. Insiders describe Meghan's reaction as deeply conflicted. On one hand, she was reportedly hurt, confused even, about why her mother couldn't just accept her version of events. On the other, she was terrified of what Doria's silence might signal to the media. After all, in the public arena, Doria's quiet presence had always served as an emotional shield. With her mother's support, Meghan had been able to position herself as grounded and real, no matter how fierce the criticism from the British press. Without it, Meghan risked looking like just another celebrity with a manufactured persona. Privately, Meghan is said to have told friends that her mother was being overly sensitive and that she didn't understand how the industry works. But those close to Doria argue that this characterization was unfair. Doria had spent years observing how fame functioned. She wasn't naive. What she rejected wasn't ambition or image building, it was secrecy. What she couldn't reconcile was the possibility that her daughter had allowed the world to see a false story, even as she expected unconditional trust from the one person who loved her without condition. And the implications weren't just emotional. With Doria stepping back, Meghan began to feel the structural cracks in her foundation. Brands noticed. Publicists whispered. Paparazzi, once respectful toward Doria's privacy, became emboldened in their speculation. Media outlets began to run side-by-side comparisons. Doria present at the wedding, Doria at baby showers, Doria with Archie, and now the glaring absence. The headlines wrote themselves. This change, subtle as it was, created an emotional ripple not just in Meghan's life, but in Harry's too. He had grown close to Doria during their courtship. He often referred to her as the calming one. Her disappearance from their family narrative was noticeable, and it reportedly put strain on their home. Meghan, already battling public distrust, now had to manage private disappointment. For observers, this moment, the rupture between Meghan and Doria, marked a thematic climax. Until now, Meghan had been framed as a woman at war with the world, with the British press, with the palace, with toxic tradition. Doria was the one safe harbor. But when that harbor receded, it forced even her most loyal supporters to ask, if your own mother walks away, what does she know that we don't? Of course, Doria has never spoken publicly about this rift. She hasn't sold her story, written a memoir, or sat for a tear-filled interview. That, in many ways, is what makes her silence so powerful. She's not seeking attention. She's making a statement through absence. There are those who argue that Doria may yet come back, that the bond between mother and daughter is elastic, even under the worst pressures. But others believe this is a break that will never fully heal. Not because of the scandal itself, but because of what it revealed, that even the deepest love can falter when it's built on incomplete truth. And so, the moment everything changed was not when Bauer's book hit the shelves. It wasn't when headlines screamed escort scandal or when commentators dissected bank transfers and travel records. It was when a mother read a version of her daughter she had never seen before and believed it. In a stunning turn that has royal watchers and Hollywood insiders in disbelief, Meghan Markle's mother, Doria Ragland, has reportedly cut off all contact, just days after bombshell revelations by investigative author Tom Bauer. According to Bauer's upcoming exposé, Meghan was allegedly involved in a high-end escort network during her early Hollywood years, operating under the cover of modeling gigs for the world's wealthiest elite. With offshore transactions, unnamed clients, and secret travel arrangements exposed, sources say Doria was blindsided and horrified. Tonight, we dive deep into the allegations, the documents, and the emotional confrontation that may have ended the most important relationship in Meghan's life. What did Doria read that made her walk away, and what happens now that the silence is speaking louder than ever?